All right, well, good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Sunday morning class with Guy Finley. We are live here in Mergen. That's Merlin, Oregon in one word, Mergen. Or Berg, yeah, it's been pretty cold too, so Mergen, Bergen. Anyway, whatever, we're here, and we're glad that you're here too. Hello to everyone here in person in Mergen. Hello to everyone online. If you're new, if you're joining us for the first time, the format here is that in just a moment, Guy will come on and give an hour-long talk. We'll take a short 5-minute break, and then we have a part 2 of our classes, which is that we have an open time for questions and dialogue and discussion with everyone in the room, everyone online, so we hope that you can stay for the full meeting today. We'll probably run till about 11 or 11:30 Pacific time. And if you aren't able to stay and you want to get to the replay, you can do that. All of these classes are recorded and put up on our social media sites for free replay, so you can go back and look for them there on Facebook and YouTube and go to webinar. I just want to make a quick note that occasionally we have some little techie gremlins, and there might be a problem on GoToWebinar, but you could check and go to YouTube or Facebook and see if the stream is working better for you, or vice versa. If you're on YouTube and something doesn't seem right, then just jump over to GoToWebinar, and usually one of those 3 places is working. So if you're watching online, just want to make sure you know that you can do that. If you're in the room here, if you have a cell phone that you brought in with you, if you could please check and make sure that it's off or in silent mode, that would be great, so that we don't disrupt the class. And online, again, if you have tech issues, you're also welcome to just send a note in the question or comment area, the chat area, send an email to support@guyfinley.org, and someone will help you. I think we're ready to get started, so I'm going to kick things off by reading the title and the key lesson that Guy wrote for today. And he's asked me to read the key lesson twice, so I'll do that. Here's the title. The first and last freedom starts here. We are not bound by any unwanted condition, but rather by our failure to realize that we've become unwitting prisoners of our own misplaced attention, which means that before we can liberate ourselves from this bondage, we must first do the inner work it takes to free our attention from the unconscious nature that misdirects it. I'll read it again. We are not bound by any unwanted condition, but rather by our failure to realize that we've become unwitting prisoners of our own misplaced attention, which means that before we can liberate ourselves from this bondage, we must first do the inner work it takes to free our attention from the unconscious nature that misdirects it.
Good morning. I have quite a bit of material to cover with you today. The title of this talk being The First and Last Freedom Starts Here. Where is here? For us, here is wherever our attention is. It's the only here we have. And it's either now or it's not. It's difficult for us to understand some of these ideas because we're so, how's this for a spiritual expression, screwed up. Minds constantly jabbering in conflict with whatever it may be that mind itself has come up with in order to try to straighten it out. But here's the main idea. And there's no way I can ever express to you how important it is that you understand it. We'll use the next 55 minutes to explore it. Until your attention is free, you're a captive of every other moment that your attention falls on. If you don't have free attention, you have nothing. You have a life produced by an endless series of sensations that are born out of your mind attending to whatever the reaction is. And you are ruled accordingly, and your life is limited to the extent of whatever the conditioning is that brought that reaction up to start with. Free attention. Free attention, meaning my attention belongs to me. And it goes where I want it to go. It attends to what I wish it to attend to. And it will not go to anything that I do not agree that it has gone to. Even if it goes there without my permission, I will take it back, because that's free will, to take my attention back. Will and attention are inexorably connected. I came across this quotation by a fellow named Thomas Traherne. He was a 17th or 18th century Christian mystic, as far as I'm concerned. And to me, he said it's true. Like William Blake, any individual who has, by grace, been given an inlet into another order of intelligence, another order of seeing, always says the same things. They just say it differently. It's the same poet, but it's different lines the way it's written. He writes, "You never enjoy the world aright till the sea itself flows in your veins, till you are clothed with the heavens and crowned with the stars, and perceive yourself to be the sole heir of the whole world, and more than so, because men are in it who are everyone sole heirs as well as you." You never really enjoy the world aright till the sea flows through your veins, till you are clothed with the heavens and crowned with the stars, and perceive yourself to be the heir of the whole world, even though all other men and humans on the planet are also heir to the same world. How can we all be heir to the same world? It's actually an act of love that makes that possible. We're going to talk quite a bit about love in the next coming week. I guess 5 talks starting Wednesday. I suppose you'll hear about it before we're done. When I read something like that, or by any other mystic master, any true Christian, any true Jew, any true Buddhist, they wrote it because they were, in that moment, overflowing with an impression that was born out of something that they had attended to in that moment and entered into in that moment, this relationship within which not only is everything revealed as being a part of the witnessing soul, but the soul witnesses itself as a part of everything it sees. That's freedom. That's what freedom is. That's what a relationship with the divine is. That's what an enlightened life is like. It's not creating a kingdom of heaven. It's entering into a heaven that exists prior to you even having the thought of such a thing, but being drawn as we are, and properly so, by what is divine within us that seeks itself within us. Gradually, a person starts to realize, this is what I would like to do with my life. This is where I would like to spend my life. For the high and low of it, for the good and bad of it. To know without having to think that at any moment that I am willing to use my attention as it is given freely, to attend to what it freely seeks, that in that moment I myself understand what it means to have the sea flow in my veins and to be crowned by the stars. Because all those are just words that describe a single, what I'm going to call in this talk, a single shining moment. I may use that as a book title, That Shining Moment. We're going to talk about that shining moment, where it is, what it is, how it is that we are kept from it, And we need understanding, such as we gain in truth schools. Because where is this one place where one can see and be one with all that there is? Where is this one place? Turn to Christian scripture. The kingdom of heaven is, as is its light and unconditional love within. And if that's true, kingdom of heaven is within, and that it's possible for a human being to enter into this, what we call this. You've all had, you wouldn't be here. You would have left so long ago if you hadn't had some moment of enlightenment, of some shining moment where you realized, God, I don't even want to see this, but thank God I do. What kind of light is that shows me what I wish I didn't see, but that I'm endlessly grateful for seeing it? It's something that was there prior to what it revealed, and in the revelation of what that shining moment shows me, I'm liberated from the darkness that I called the light prior to that moment. Yes? What's keeping us from understanding and entering into that shining moment? That's our topic. Nice deep breath. Remember, we're talking about free attention. It would seem, I'm asking you, that at least 1,000 different things every day call for my attention. How about you? It's uncanny, which means it comes in a box. I'll be here all week. But the thing is that it's just like, you know how I talk about that squirrel, like, just nut, tree, sound, water, woman, man, just like that. 1,000 different, but there's never any communion in all of the things that you attend to. The rare communion is when, by an act of grace, your attention is drawn to something natural and beautiful, an epiphany, some form of light or color or form. And in that moment, there's a communion because your attention goes into that moment, into that shining moment. And what makes that moment shine? What makes that moment shine other than, for a moment, I'm not just the observer and I'm not just the observed, but I'm in a place seemingly in between where the parts, where the whole is great, the holy is greater than the sum of its parts. Please? So we have no sense of our existence at all. When I say that, and I always used to marvel at the way the mind works, and it takes too long to try to explain this to you. When I tell you that you have no real sense of existence at all, in that moment you have a sense of existence. But the sense of existence you have in that moment is not a real sense of existence. What you have is the sense of thinking about yourself having existence, and that's what you call having existence. So what we have is basically a fleeting sense of ourself that is moved along from pillar to post as a result of this unconscious nature having a passive relationship with everything and everyone that it meets along the way. That's my sense of self. Essentially, it is an identity derived from a reaction. And not the first reaction, but remember we talked about the second arrow? From the second reaction. Now, what does that mean? That my experience of life, my sense of self, is constantly born of a passive act of my attention being placed on whatever my attention is drawn to. It means, and this is what nobody wants to hear or understand, I have no attention of my own. You really believe that you have your own attention. I'm telling you, you don't. And one day when you see clearly that this teacher knew, you'll say, thank God I didn't run from that. Because what you call attention, what humanity calls attention, is the object of desire. Yes, there's a form of attention to the object of desire. But the object of desire is a passive response to some image that passes into the consciousness by which I see something I want or I don't want. And in that moment, my attention on what I want or don't want activates this nature, creates what seems to be a will, and then I get rid of what I don't want or I try to get more of what I do, and I call that my will. And this world worships human beings who are compelled to search and seek out things that make them seem substantial when they are as helpless as you are. And here's what your mind says: well, I'd like to have that much money and be helpless too. Because then it wouldn't hurt so much. It hurts more. And the rock has to be buried deeper and deeper, because there's no getting around the impossible description of a human being who believes they're connected to life when what they're connected to is the object of a desire, and believing that the sensation of that relationship and attending to it is who they are, and it is not. Still with me, everybody? I do want to keep this as simple as I can. So as we are now, and at least entertain the idea, our attention is not our own, but we end up identifying with whatever that sense of self is that is born to whatever that nature reacts to. My sense of self is a derivative of identifying with a reaction. You can see this. Do I have to make explanations for this much? I remember a long time ago now, probably more than 40 years ago, I had the good fortune of working very closely with a true illumined human being, as far as I was concerned, a Christian mystic of the highest order. And one day he used this expression. He was talking about actually the very thing that I'm talking to you about now. But here's how he described it. He said, most of humanity takes out their bow and arrow, they let the arrow fly, and then wherever it lands, they draw the bullseye around it. You see, that's a perfect description for what happens when your attention is taken and it lands someplace, it sticks into something, and then when it sticks into what it sticks in, then the mind begins to describe why it is that it got there, how you intended it to be there, or you wished it didn't, and then all of your actions are predicated on the illusion that you were the one who put what you're attending to in the place that it went. Do you understand that? Yes. An unconscious nature that's drawn like a fish to a lure, to whatever it attracts, to whatever attracts its attention in that moment. Simple example, because we need examples. Have you ever walked in some place and got negative just looking at someone? Or just looking in the mirror? How can I get negative just looking at someone? Do you or do you not? How can I get anxious visited by a single thought? Oh, God, tomorrow. What? Tomorrow. My brother, my sister, oh my God. How can I be made anxious and fearful by a single thought? How is that possible? Because in that moment, without understanding it, my attention was drawn to what that unconscious nature was triggered by in that moment. And once it was drawn to it, the arrow flew, and then the experience of what? Of attending to the very thing that I don't want to attend to. What a phenomenon. To believe that somehow or other, what my attention has fallen on fell there by accident, and as a result of that accident, I have to control or otherwise change what it is that my mind is looking at in that moment, when my mind has chosen what it is looking at, and then drag me into conflict trying to control the circumstance that it blames the unwanted experience of itself upon. Are you still, everybody? So it sees someone that looks like, I better not use a name because some of you will take it personally. Uncle Clara. And I can still smell the brisket she made me eat. But I don't think to myself when I see someone like that my attention has gone into the conditioned past, pulled out something from that experience it doesn't want, so that I actually wind up not wanting the very thing that my attention has been put on. Do you see it? Or a thought. Just a thought. Here, I'll give you one that you all should know pretty well. How am I ever going to get through this? Nobody knows the trouble I've seen and coming my way. Now, who put your thought into time and the torment connected to it? Who put your thought there? You believe that when it goes, here's the reaction. Now it's my responsibility to resolve why it is the arrow is sticking into that target, when the target, by the way, is myself. Talk about pin the tail on the donkey. It flies to a nature that sees the cause it has pointed to as being the source of its disturbance, unable to see that what it's actually attending to in that moment and experiencing in that moment is the content of its own conditioned nature. Now, if you've understood that much, it should be somewhat shocking to see that our attention is placed for us. I didn't put it there. Would you put your attention someplace that when, as goes my attention, what? So comes my experience. So would I give my attention to the experience of something that I didn't want then and that I don't want now and that I fear in the future? Would I give my attention to that? Would I? Out loud? But, that's exactly what happens. And then because of the way it happens and the fact that it is accomplished by an unconscious nature, drawn to something that when it enters into that experience rejects summarily itself, then what does that nature do other than begin to draw the bullseye around it so that it can explain to itself how it got there, why it must deal with where it landed, and everything that it, all the different ways it needs to relate to the problem. Now here's the thing. So our attention placed for us, yes? Follow me now. So my attention is either drawn to consider a situation outside of myself. You see that, yeah? And or it is riveted on the reaction to where that attention fell. So my attention either goes outside to looking at Uncle Clara, to remembering what you did 32 years ago. My attention either goes onto something seen as the cause of the conflict I'm in, or seemingly seamless, my attention falls on the sense of self that's born out of not wanting what I have given my attention to. So that there is this is very important to understand, there is this endless vacillation that's accomplished by an unconscious mind attending in one moment to what it doesn't want, and then the self that doesn't want it. The thing that it needs and the thing that is needy. Back and forth, so quick in one respect. It's actually so slow, one day you'll be shocked. That there is this derivative sensation produced by the movement of thought and its response to its own reactions. A derivative sensation coming out of that moment. Can you see that? Like rubbing two sticks together, cause, the one experiencing the cause, the one experiencing the cause revisiting the cause in order to figure it out, and then when it figures it out, being in conflict because it challenges something else, and now my sense of self is threatened again, back and forth. Do you see it? Yep. So it actually seems that there's a difference between what I'm thinking about and the nature that's doing the thinking. I don't want to go too fast. This is too important. This is setting the stage for our preparation for love talks. I know it's a day early or 4 days early, and maybe we'll put it in, maybe we won't. But here's the point. When I'm thinking about what my wife said to me yesterday that was so cruel, I'm just an example, she didn't. My mind does what? It vacillates back and forth between what I'm thinking about and then the one who's experiencing his own thoughts. So I'm actually attending to my own negative reaction because my negative reaction is attending to what it imagines will free me from this unkind person. So that this vacillation from what I'm thinking about and the experience of those thoughts, when you attend to any thought, first you're attending to the past. You have to understand that. When you attend to the past, what is your experience? What's your experience when you attend to the past? Whatever the content is of that thought or that memory. So my mind goes there, and then I get this experience. This is so crazy. I get the experience I don't want by thinking about something that I don't want. And as I have that reaction, what happens? Now I'm not thinking about that anymore. What am I thinking about? How am I going to free myself from what I have spied? And it just goes on forever, and it has been going on forever. This seeming difference. So in this moment, little transition here. What's really going on? My attention, without me knowing it, has been placed on some condition outside of myself. Yes or no? And when it goes on a condition outside of myself, then I begin to have the experience, and this is important to understand, I actually begin to fear the very condition that my mind has placed outside of me, because now it seems outside of my control. And so the more I react to what my mind has been drawn to and that I'm attending to, then the more the flip side takes place, where I have to figure out what to do with this fear, with this worry, with this doubt, with this enmity I feel towards this person. And I believe that my experience is other than what I'm considering. When the experience of that self doesn't exist without that self first considering what it did and attended to for reasons that are beyond explanation. They just have to be seen. Are you all still with me? Bouncing back and forth between what we see as the cause of experience and the experience of myself. Cause of experience, you. Experience of myself, I don't like you and I don't want to be here. Negativity. This experience of myself that seems to be caused by the world outside of me is, in fact, the result of a nature that has to find something outside of itself to explain to itself why it feels the way it does in that moment. So are you getting the big picture here? Because I'm bringing back a phrase I used. What's going on in that moment? I'm outside, and I'm believing that the experience of what is outside of me is responsible for the experience of what's going on inside of me. I believe that beyond the shadow of a doubt. But I can also see that it's the experience going on within me that doesn't want the experience of itself, that then starts looking for something else to experience. So now it starts attending to something else. And you can see, if you can, there is this loop where these opposites that we don't recognize as being a singularity. What are the opposites we don't recognize as a singularity? The observed and the observer. Because I believe what I'm observing is responsible for the experience of the observer. But what I'm looking at is not responsible for the experience of the observer, nor is the observer responsible for what it observes. They are brought together in a moment that they don't see each other as being inextricably linked. Yes? To see they are inextricably connected is the light of that shining moment. That is the light of that shining moment. Let me get into this. Nice deep breath. Do I want to do this right now? Yeah. First, setting the stage. Though we do not understand it yet, stay awake, don't go to sleep. I hope this isn't too challenging. Do you not believe that a reaction that you have to anyone, positive or negative, do you not believe that the sense of self that is derived from that reaction is a valid sense of self, and that that sense of self lingers sometimes for decades? Yes or no? What lingers for decades is the nature that identifies with the second reaction. But let me get into this in a way that you can understand it. Reactions, ready? Repeat after me. Reactions, appear, and disappear, in the same moment. No reaction lingers. If it did, there'd be no creation. Look, reaction requires what? Something that's active, yes, and something that's passive. Isn't that what a reaction requires? And when something active hits something passive, I throw this at the audience. There it is. Active, passive, and a sudden what? Shining light. A sudden light that doesn't exist apart from the active and passive forces. And this is the reaction. Active, passive, and what is created in the moment of their intersection. That light doesn't last. It's there for as long as those conditions created it. But that light in that moment reveals the relationship between what is active and what is passive, and proves that the reaction has no staying power of its own. And that we're not intended to identify with the reaction, but rather to look at that reaction through the shining light that it creates, so that in our awareness of the fact that this comes and goes, that nothing stays in place save for a sense of self attending to what it makes of that reaction. Isn't that what happens? Somebody says something to me. Is it over like that? Is it? You know what happened to me 22 years ago? I could have been champ. I was on my way to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. I wouldn't be sitting at 12 hours a day for the last 62 years doing this. I could have been somebody. Lingering, an identity derived from something that believes what it calls the cause is responsible for its experience in that moment. And what it calls the cause is not responsible. What's responsible is the nature that attends to what it is named as the cause and then names itself accordingly. So far, so good? I don't want to lose you. So if reactions appear and disappear, they did what they were assigned to do. You weren't assigned to the reaction, but now you are. Do you understand that? You think that the reaction gives you an assignment. Yes or no? Yes. Chica. Out loud. Thank you. So I have a reaction. It's my assignment to do what? To change or control what I'm reacting to. And then the reaction takes on the identity, a derivative of something attending to that moment, not wanting it or wanting it, and hoping somehow or other, if it can just manipulate the experience it blames on the reaction, it will escape itself or be able to change itself. And has it ever escaped or changed itself? So as we are now, working towards a certain point, our reactions are what? If you're following me, as we are now, our reactions do what? They capture my attention. It's so simple as to be missed. The reaction captures my attention. Do I have free attention if my reaction captures it? No. If anything can capture me, am I free? No. Reactions capture my attention. And as goes my attention? Of what? Of the reaction. And the reaction is made up of illusion. Not the first reaction, but that which doesn't know what to do with that second reaction when it comes up, and suddenly I am a slave. It's an accurate word. I'm a slave to my own reactions. Are you not a slave to your appetites? It's stunning, to tell you the truth. And what are my appetites other than something that comes along and triggers something conditioned in me that wants to express the pleasure or get rid of the pain, and then I follow summarily like some blind fool. The blind follow the blind and fall in the pit, so that I have no idea whatsoever that the reaction has captured me. And it captured me because it captured what? My attention. So my experience of that moment is what I call I. But the experience of the sensation is not I. It's just one of the many stars, if you will, in the night sky that we're intended to be crowned by and not hit over the head with. Constantly vacillating. And you just have to see some of this. There's no way that I can explain all of it to you. Constantly vacillating. Have you ever sit at home and drive yourself nuts all the time? I'm serious. Now, why would I? Here, I'll try this way. The reason that I can sit at home and drive myself nuts and make myself the most unpleasant creature that ever walked the planet and then blame somebody else for my pain is because I cannot see yet that my attention goes first to this second reaction, to something that looks and says, oh, that's what happened, goes there. Once it says, oh, look where it went to, then it does what? Then out of that identification with that condition, it begins to try to sort through, given what it knows about the cause it named. So now it starts to come up with things to do about this unwanted sense of self born out of your attention going to this dark reaction. The more I give myself over to thinking about what to do with this reaction, the more reactions I'm having. Because it's, yeah, that'll work. No, that's no good. Oh my God, there's not enough time. How did that happen? I don't know. Why are you this way? And all of that dialogue going on in this mind draws our attention more and more, listen, to the bulk unwanted experience of the self that believes it's actually escaping itself by trying to sort through what it has given its attention to. When the escape, to use that word, isn't an escape at all. It's an understanding that my attention is my attention, free attention. If the world understood that, it would be a different world. Not free Willie, Billy, Bob, Sam, and somebody else. The world's so absorbed with. No, free attention. Free my attention. So that I don't give my attention to something that is already in pain because it's already conflicted. And so by not giving my attention to something, a cause that already, do you understand that your causes already have all the pain in them that they could possibly have? To be identified is to suffer. So I am always attracted to and attend to something that I'm identified with that I don't know I'm identified with until the moment brings it up in this unconscious nature. Do you see that? Bring up the second key lesson, please. I guess I won't see it. The spiritual body that alone can stand the buffeting of unconscious opposing forces that learns to use them for the continued realization of its own innate perfection is further developed each time we struggle as needed to remember that nothing in this world or the next has the right to turn our own attention against us. Please see what that means. When your attention is given to a reaction, and the sense of self is a derivative of identifying with what you've attended to in that moment, your own attention is turned against you. But we don't think our attention is turned against us when that arrow has hit the wall and we draw the bullseye around it, because at that point I'm explaining to myself why my attention is there. And it's all justified because if I hadn't done that or you didn't do that, I wouldn't be the way I am. Our own attention is turned against us, just to even suspect the truth of that. Do you ever sit at home and get fearful when you hear some kind of news? Why? You see, to you it's natural. Why do I get anxious when somebody that I have had a problem with, I see them walking up towards me? Why? To what am I attending to in that moment? I'm attending to an image, some content of a conditioned mind, of something in my past. I'm attending to it, and as I attend to it, I'm experiencing it. I think I'm experiencing what I'm looking at. I'm not experiencing you or the news. I'm experiencing what this mind has made out of this experience, this reaction. So I'm experiencing my reaction that I blame on you when the reaction was there before you said or did anything at all. And then you wonder why you fight with people. Because everybody looks at life through the exact same unconscious nature, that every time there's an unwanted moment, that unconscious nature points to the cause outside of itself to explain the experience of itself it doesn't want. When it is the experience of that self, its past, applied to that moment, and from that application, a derivative sense of self that we don't want comes forth. Do you see? So here's an OMG moment. What happens? We're working towards an exercise now. What happens? What happens in the moment that there's a disturbance? What happens in that moment? A reaction. And what is the reaction ostensibly designed to do? What is the reaction ostensibly designed to do? Anybody? No, I have this reaction to you, and when I have this reaction to you, what do I want to do? I want power over you. I want to control the moment. Isn't that what the reaction is saying? Here's the moment, it's outside of you, and since it's outside of you, you better gain some kind of authority, you better get power, you better find God, you better do something in this moment so that that moment no longer has authority over you. So that moment of reaction, which is essentially just a projection, produces instantaneously this thought, boy, I need some kind of power here. You want to know why do you know why we want power, possession, authority? Do you know why you want it? Because you can turn to it to help you escape what you have given your own attention to when your sense of self is challenged by it. Oh, it's so simple in some respects. You're at your office, you're in your car. When you get mad at somebody, do you ever get mad without thinking about what you need to do with what you're mad about? Or is it all built into it, a kind of a seamless stream of one reaction giving up to a set of rules, rules defining the reality, reality defining what you do? Every one of those moments when you feel the slight, again, God willing, this gets so much brighter inside of you. Every moment there's a little anxiety, a little fear, a little anger, a little worry. Every last one of those moments comes attended to by a wish to have power over what you believe has caused that pain. Does it not? Isn't that what the mind is always doing? Now try to follow this. Instead of attending to a nature that looks for a way to gain power over the moment that it has created, what you have to understand and begin to realize is that there is power in these moments themselves. Not looking for power over these moments, but finding the power, the shining light in that moment itself. Because it's there. Do I need power over you if I don't have a person or some sense of myself that's problematic because of you? Do I need power over this world? Did Christ need power over Pilate? How did Christ answer to Pilate when Pilate was accusing him? What happens when you're accused? You know exactly. Up comes all of this image, this sense of self, and when it comes up, boy, then I'm on the defensive, believing incidentally that the experience of hating you is because of what you are, not because of I'm identified and attached to my own image. How did Christ deal with that? He was silent. You need to understand that in the moment you don't want is the power to see the self that doesn't want it. In the moment you don't want is the light, is the power to see the you that doesn't want it. That's the only way a human being ever awakens. No other way. That is the truth that sets you free. Because as long as fear is real to you, it's because there is something in you that really believes you have to have what it's imagined in order to be who you are. There's nothing that needs to be done about these unwanted moments other than to use these words, to first feel how my attention wants to be drawn to what it believes is this darkness that's overcoming it. But it happens. This is the point, you see? This is why you have to work. It's like that. God, you don't even have to know who's on the other side of the phone call. Phone can just ring, especially if it's early in the morning or late at night. Yes or no? Oh, God, I hate those early morning, late night calls because I'm sure somebody's died or the stock market crashed or the doctor couldn't wait to tell me I was on my way out. One of those things. How is it possible to be afraid of something that hasn't happened unless it's already happened in your mind? So there's nothing that needs to be done except for one thing. And I was kind of thinking through this, how to talk about it. You know, in certain traditions, there's this idea, I think maybe it was Buddha tradition, but I bet you find it everywhere, the idea of the middle path. You've heard of that, haven't you? See, for us, immature as we are, the middle path is nothing in excess. Not too much of this, not too little of that. Middle path. That's not the middle path at all. That's the layman's middle path. The spiritual middle path is understanding the shining light. The moment that already exists that illuminates the opposites instead of being identified with one opposite or the other. That's the middle path. And you know why nobody finds the middle path? Because nobody walks it. Because there's no one there to walk the middle path. The middle path already exists. The shining light that reveals that what I'm identified with doesn't exist apart from my reaction. My reaction doesn't exist apart from my attending to the content of it. And all that you see as you go through your life, and you will, this will all become clearer and clearer and clearer to you as you begin to work with what? Where are we going to start with this? How am I going to, in quotes, because it's a pretty big ideal, isn't it? I love this, the light of the shining moment. That's great. But where's the light of the shining moment when my whole mind is filled with the darkness of a condition I don't want or a conflict with a person I can't escape? Where's the light of that shining moment? For that nature, it doesn't exist. Do you understand that? And that nature doesn't want it to exist because it exists in order to have the continuity of itself produced by a stream of time that it wants to escape, but it creates with every thought it has. So here's the shining moment. I'm going to describe it to you, but you have to do the work. How many of you watched Insight Timer yesterday? Do you remember I talked about this idea of connectivity? Talked about how you can sense something and be at once not just what you are sensing, but the whole sense of that moment itself as something connected. So here's the moment you don't want. The first thing that usually happens is I attend to that. But I'm starting to wake up. I've been attending to problems my whole life, trying to free myself and gain control over the pain, the fear, the insecurity. How about just judging yourself? Who judges you? Who judges you? It's extraordinary. You know who judges you? Who judges you is what happens when the judge takes your attention and places it on some comparative image, and then you fail to live up to the image that your attention has gone to, and then your attention goes to loathing yourself because you're not the way you imagined yourself. Look at all this energy that's been wasted. You know, if 1,000 men and women actually understood and practiced what you're being taught, the world would be a different world. The energy around this planet would be a different energy. It's the only hope we have. So, not just attend to this. What's this? The condition blamed as the cause. Not just attend to this. Yes? But also not just attend to the reaction to it. Because you can't separate the cause from the reaction to it, can you? But isn't that exactly what this nature does? It separates the cause from the reaction. In fact, the reactive nature has to have a cause outside of itself, otherwise that nature can't continue itself in its own name. And that's what it wants. You see? So, not just attend to the cause, in quotes, what he said, what she did. And I know I'm going to get questions like this. Yeah, and I understand that, but what about what somebody said to me when I was 9 years old? What about that person at the office who's so toxic that you can't breathe around them? Are you saying I shouldn't react to them? I'm not telling you to do, I almost said a bad word. I'm not telling you to do anything. I'm asking you to see for a fact that what you call the cause of your conflict does not exist apart from the fact that something in you gave your attention to it, and when it gave your attention to it, the corresponding reaction validates your sense of self as being inseparable from what you blame for your pain. And it is, it is inseparable in one respect, but until you understand, not this, not that, not this reaction, not what I blame for it, and the sense of self, but rather to be aware in that moment. Here's the light of the moment, the shining moment. To be aware of what is outside of me at the same time that I'm aware of my reaction to it. And that's it. That's it. Nothing more to do. And if you actually understand that, you know why you'll know there's nothing more for you to do? Because you'll understand anything in you that's called to act is part of this unconscious relationship between the supposed observer and the thing observed. You be free. And here's what you say. But I don't know if I really want to be free like that. I mean, I have an important life. I have possessions, powers, authority. People look at me in a certain way. I got to keep that going, don't I? I got to keep the whole thing going. What do you have to keep going? One day when you understand this, you will stop keeping it going. The kingdom of hell is what this consciousness keeps going. The kingdom of violence, the kingdom of unkindness, the kingdom of anxiety and fear. That's what this nature keeps going. Every time its attention is captured by a thought, a reaction, and once its attention goes to that, as goes my attention. So when I'm experiencing a negative reaction, I believe that the experience of that reaction is because of the cause my mind has come up with, doesn't it? But what am I actually experiencing in a negative reaction other than the conditioned content of an unconscious nature that's just reliving itself again and again and again? Yes or no? Be aware within and without at the same time, giving your attention to the so-called thinker and the thought, the observer and the observer. That's the light of the shining moment. Because, what did I do with my magic stuff? Because that reaction is over. It did what it came to do. You and I don't understand that life has its own way. It came what it came to do. And what did it come to do? Listen to this. To create a momentary light by which you can see that the passive and the active are not antagonistic, but they're brought together so that you can see that you are both sides of the equation, and that the revelation of both sides of the equation proves that this nature is greater than the sum of its parts, and it doesn't have to fear any separate part that it creates in imagination. Let's bring up the last key lesson. It's a summary. Nice deep breath. It is where we place our attention in any given moment that determines not just how and what we experience in that shining moment, but also what we may be given to discover about the higher possibilities of our own true nature. You're outside, and for a moment you see that breathtaking madrone having shed its skin in this bright gleaming body of a tree. You see, as I love to do in the wintertime, the madrone has a wax underneath its leaves, and we drive up the driveway and it's like Christmas. All these leaves shine. You have the sun come out in the middle of a day. You're at the golf course and you see something that's breathtaking, a panoramic view, whatever it may be. In that moment, is there a separation between what I observe and the self-observing it? Or in that moment, is it, as Traherne said, my veins are filled with the movement of the ocean? So it's where you place your attention, and you can see by contrast, because that's how we have to start. Well, there is that possibility. I've looked up at a night sky, or I've just looked at a beautiful, did you see the clouds yesterday when I saw these colors? I've never seen these colors before. In that moment, am I not discovering something about this consciousness that this consciousness didn't know was true about itself? The beauty you see isn't outside of you. The beauty you see is in the eye of the beholder, and the beholder is that which sees and which sees cause and content at the same moment. So if that's true, then it means that in any given moment, if I'm willing to enter into the light of that shining moment, into that illumination that proves that these seeming opposites are not antagonistic at all, in that moment, every one of those moments, I am renewed. I'm literally reborn, because I have a new understanding about myself and the world I'm in and everyone that's around me. And every time that glimpse, that grace comes, it changes the whole of that nature, so that increasingly you don't want to be defined by a reaction that you shoot the arrow and then name for yourself what happened. You want to stay there, listen, not having another, how shall I say? Not having another life experience that's just a derivative of all the others, but rather having the experience of life. Because that's what I'm talking to you about. Let's take a break. We'll come back and have our dialogue.
Hello, everybody. My name is Roger, and I'd like to make a quick announcement. If you're a local student and intend to attend the Foundation's annual bonfire on New Year's Eve, please sign up on the clipboard that I have on the back table, and it's printed out in red, so you can't miss it. Please also see Chris and or Patricia to pay the $10 charge for the food and the event. And again, that's going to be, of course, on New Year's Eve, December 31st at 5:30 p.m. And look forward to seeing you there.
All right, welcome back to second part of class. We are going to now open it up for a discussion with all of you in the room, Guy, you online. So anyone who is in the room and wants to come up, of course, you know you can just jump up when you're ready. If you're online and you're on GoToWebinar, you can raise your hand, and that lets me know that you wish to speak with Guy. Let me check really quick. I don't have anyone in the queue right now, it looks like. Yeah, okay. If you're on Facebook or YouTube, you can write a question or a comment into the chat area, and I'll grab that. Before we get into our Q&A, just a couple of reminders. So Roger just mentioned New Year's, but prior to that, we have our holiday banquet, which is coming up just next week, this coming week. So as you heard from Guy, I guess this was the unofficial intro to the unofficial intro on Wednesday, which then leads into our weekend, our holiday weekend on Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So all of the talks that we're going to be having here are going to be broadcast live, as they always are, and I really hope that you'll be able to make the time to come and watch them. The ones on the weekend are all going to be live streamed, but they won't be available on our channels. They'll only be available in a replay package afterwards. So if you can, come to all of the live classes. So that would be Wednesday at 6 p.m. Pacific, Friday at 7 p.m. Pacific, Saturday at 11 a.m., and then Sunday at the same time as today, 9:30. And so all of those are going to be free online. You can also get the replay package if you wish. You'll find all of this information on our website if you just go to the events section, or you go to guyfinley.org/holiday, and that will take you to the right page so you can get that info. And of course, if you have any questions, just let us know. And just another quick reminder, too, that right after the banquet, so the banquet is December 13th through the 15th, and then right after that, for 3 weeks, the foundation will be closing down, so we will not have classes online or in person. But then when we come back in the new year, we're going to have, start up our classes again. We're going to have a new schedule. I'm not going to go into all the details because I've already given the announcement many times, but please do go to our website, again, to the events page, guyfinley.org/events, or just look for the events page on our website. And there's a little posting right there that's prominent on that page that will tell you all the details about how long we're closed down, when we start back up, what the schedule is going to be when we start back up, etc. So just do go look at that. All right, let me check my notes here really quick. Make sure I haven't missed anything. I think we're ready to get started with our discussion. Guy, do you have anything you wish to start with, or shall I jump in?
No, let's just get into it.
All right, so we're going to start with a question that came in from Annette. Annette says, what about holidays and birthdays when you get reminders of people you usually do not have to think about? And then some people pull out very old pictures and live in the past, dredging up the same old stale, weird stories, dragging others into their memory lane. Some people cling to the robotic traditions. Others are like soldiers with obligatory reunions. It is a breath of fresh air not to be part of or sucked into a mentality. So how can we have peace and not be pulled back into having the adverse reaction? Free my attention, don't go there.
Hi, Annette. I like the way you wrote your question. So you phrase it at the end, so how can we have peace and not be pulled back into having the adverse reaction? to all the fruitcakes that I find myself surrounded by during the holidays. By the way, how do you know everybody's a fruitcake? Because you're nuts yourself. So I need you to see this differently, Annette. You say, how can we have peace and not be pulled back into having the adverse reaction? Seeing the reaction as adverse to my interests is what freedom is, because then I don't go along with it. We're not trying to create peace. People, you believe that you are the creator of love, of kindness, of goodness. You actually believe you are the creator of happiness. It is the rare human being who creates something that doesn't become identified with their creation. Identification is the curse, not the blessing. The truth will teach you what it means to suffer from this involuntary attention that only exists in order to confirm the identity that called your attention to what it did. When I was reading your question here, Annette, I wrote down what I would call a key lesson, I suppose, because it applies. I'm going to read it to you. Mindfulness, or maybe what we would call meditation, mindfulness isn't an exercise. It's a necessity. And until it is seen as such, we remain mindless of where our attention has been taken, as will we be mindless of the negative effect of having given our attention to that which has defeated us before we got there. You want to apply spiritual teachings so that you can have control over yourself. This work is not about control over yourself. This work is about seeing the nature that is so afraid of itself that it creates conditions under which it believes it can control itself. It's what it pursues. It's all it's interested in. Are things it can identify with that as it does so gives it a momentary sense of being greater than the thing it fears. Fear ends when you see there's no reason for fear, and that whatever gives you a reason for fear has already defeated you. And it doesn't matter what fear brings you, because no matter what it brings you, it leaves you more afraid than you began with. And this time of the year, Annette, very special. I even alluded to this yesterday in the Inside Timer. When do you have more demands on you that make you negative than during the joyous time of year? When are you trying harder to be someone seen as being generous and kind and loving? And look at my tree. Look at my jolly Santa hat. Look at my beard. Ho, ho, ho. Do you know it's a curse to want to make an impression on anybody? It's a curse. It is literally a curse. And it's a curse to want to be somebody that is seen as being special. Because then your soul belongs to any passing eye that happens to look off instead of looking upon you with confirmation. So Annette, who says you have to... Sorry. So let's imagine now that you and I are best friends. And I, as best friend, I pretty much know all of your secrets, which, by the way, I do. And because I know all of your secrets, there are certain times when I can't wait to somehow or other remind you that I know something about you that you wish you didn't know, let alone I know. So now imagine that I remind you at least 3 times a day of the things that you don't want to be reminded of. How long do you keep me in your life as your BFF? How long? With friends, who needs enemies with friends like you? Yes or no? So somebody's reminding me of something I don't want to remember. Where is the obligation for me to derive an identity from that memory? Do you understand the question? Who gives who? Your present nature is not for you. It's for itself. And when you understand it's for itself, then when it reminds you of the things that even as it does so, you have a negative reaction to, then you can realize, I don't have to have a negative reaction to what I'm being reminded of. I just need to see the mind that's doing it, and then it's done. It's the end. I swear to you that the day will come when you will see the devil behind the 12th tree. You will see the fear, the anxiety, the anger, the insecurity, the ambition, the addiction. You will see it, and before it claims your attention, at which point you are now the servant to it because the identity has its own flow. Before that happens, you're free. That's called free attention.
Hello, my name is Patricia. You know, when I first came to this work, the whole time I've been here, I used to think, I don't know if I want to be free of identification. How will I feel? You know, that's what gives me pleasure in life, what I'm identified with. And but you know, through the years doing this work, it's when we're not identified that there's the pleasure. The pleasure's there when we're not, the joy comes up, the spiritual joy. If you ever felt that, nothing compares with spiritual joy. And you can't have that when you're identified. That just is a gift. So if you're like I was, and still am to some degree, and think, well, I want to be identified. Where will I feel? How will I feel if I'm not? It's much better to not be identified.
To be clear, you're not being told not to have pleasure. You're being asked to see that your pleasure is inseparable from your pain. That's all you're asked to see. And the more you see that, the more you can have pleasure, but you won't be attracted to trying to keep it in place or make more of it or any of that. It'll just be the natural. Pleasure will be the natural reaction between what you're given in that moment and your willingness to receive it or your need to be free of it. That's what pleasure is.
All right, we have a question from Annette, but first I'm going to go to Gloria, who has raised her hand in the queue, so I'm unmuting you, Gloria. And there you are.
Good morning, Di. Can you hear me?
Oh, I was singing Gloria in my mind. Now I can hear you.
Thank you. Sorry, we have a reverberation. That's not good. Me being the observer to the observed, is that the divine showing you, teaching you something, and refining you like gold?
You remember when I had the sparkle thing? Are you still on? Can I talk to her?
Yes.
Okay.
I was just mute for you.
Okay, well, stay with me, okay? Remember when I was showing that light?
Yes.
And what did we say that moment of interaction between active and passive, between seeming condition and interior cause, what did we say that light was actually there to do in that brief moment that it was revealing what it was? What was it doing, Gloria? Do you remember? It was showing.
I was taking notes. I was taking notes on.
It was showing us what we could not see without that light. It was showing us that whatever my experience of the moment is cannot be separated from whatever the cause is it blames. So that I see for a split second by that light that these opposites do not exist the way this fallen nature professes them. These opposites are, in fact, a constant state of marriage, a constant reaction by which that light reveals, please, I am not just the sense of self, and I'm not just the experience producing that sense of self. I am something greater than the sum of the parts. And the discovery that I'm not the individual part, left, right, this or that, the discovery of that is the beginning of liberation, because now I'm not looking to one side or the other in order to define me or tell me what I need to do to be delivered from myself. There's just the revelation. There's no I in revelation. There's no separate sense of self in the moment where something is beautiful, clear, harmonious. In a moment of an epiphany, there's no separate self that's having the epiphany. The self steals in after that to claim the experience and to measure and stow that sensation away so that it can relive it again and be judged, by the way, by its own inability to recreate the experience of itself. Gloria?
Yeah, I got it. That makes sense.
Okay, good.
The self is very destructive.
Well, everything has, everything, I'll just leave it there. Stay with us. Keep working.
Thank you, Guy. It was very good information today.
I'm glad that you were able to be with us, Gloria.
All right, let's see, I just have a written question from Frida. Do you have that, Guy?
I do.
Okay. Lately, I see the unconscious mind going from one problem to another, and I know it's not problems, but it's hard to stay out of it. Sometimes I can look at it, but often I see Frida in between, and then you feel yourself going in all directions, and then it's hard to stay out of it. But I guess that's also the unconscious mind trying to drag you along. I can see that I don't have my own life and would like to live more consciously. It often starts well at the beginning of the day, but then you totally forget about it. I see the truth in everything you tell, but I would like to stay awake. Help, Frida. Help, Frida.
What if you knew that help wasn't on the way, but that it's always there with you? That's the shining moment. That's the light of the shining moment, is the realization that heaven was already there by your side. Christ, God, the divine, never not with you. You were just not with it because your attention had been given ungainly, unconsciously, to that which this nature that says it wants God, but doesn't want anything to do with what is truly godly. It wants to be the God of its own reactions, failing to see that it is also the one who suffers its own reactions. It's encouraging, Frida and everybody else. It may not seem so, but just the way a question is written indicates that a certain bit of shining moment, a bit of light has begun to come into that person's life. Because before you start earnestly learning to observe yourself, to be truly mindful, you know why I said that mindfulness isn't an exercise. It's inherent in what is needed. In the morning, I have coffee every morning. I make myself my coffee. And the way that I make it, I always try to be as present as I can. Not because I'm trying to be present, but because if I'm not, my attention will be on some thought that I have, something I'm working on, or whatever it'll be on, And when my attention isn't where I'm making my coffee, invariably, because you see, the body is so mechanical. You know, one day you'll see, when you're doing stuff that you always do, your body doesn't change for an inch the way it works. Everything about its movement is already mechanical. It's a machine. So I live with a coffee making machine. I don't have a machine that makes coffee. I'm the machine that makes coffee. And if I'm not present when I'm making coffee, then the machine will blunder because it doesn't know that the cup is there because it's busy thinking about filling its cup with something else. And so it'll spill sugar, it'll knock something over, and especially if it's taken a long time to make my special juice in the morning. It doesn't happen often, but years ago, it takes 20 minutes to make my I call it my go juice. And you knock over your go juice, not only have you wasted probably about $3 worth of good stuff, but you have to do it again. And in the morning, you don't have time to do stuff again. Why? Because your attention is on the fear of not getting things done, which is why you knock things over and don't get things done. So mindfulness isn't an exercise, it's a necessity. And when it becomes a necessity, then you begin to understand how beautiful it is that you can be mindful and how critical it is that you stay mindful, because if you're not mindful, you're going to make a mess out of something, a relationship. I think that's all. Well, I was saying this, Frida. I want to give you some encouragement. I know, even though you may not, by the questions and the way things are stated, that you are seeing things that you have not seen. That's all you can ask for in this life. May I see something I haven't seen before? Because even the things that you see that you don't want to see are a form of rebirth to a consciousness that, rather than being supported by what it wants to see, recognizes it can no longer support itself in its old endeavors, and a slow crucifixion takes place as it must.
I'm just going to read this comment that also came in from Rebecca because it follows that just perfectly. Rebecca says, "Good morning. During Wednesday's talk, Guy mentioned he also continues speaking to continue to encourage students. I am eternally grateful for these classes and continue to see more about this consciousness. It is sobering to be in awareness of this lower consciousness's levels of blindness, which continue to be revealed at deeper and deeper levels. Sheesh, what a labyrinth."
Yeah.
And we don't have any more questions or hands, just so you know.
Deeper and deeper levels. Come on. You're welcome to come up and speak if anybody wants to, and if not, we have lots of other things to do.
I just love the quote that Guy used in the talk today. I don't have it all written down. By Thomas Turin, is that? Train. "You never enjoyed the world aright till the sea flows through your veins," and it goes on and on. And I just think every one of us want to experience life. I mean, like to really be in the moment instead of being this machine that is pulled here and there and everywhere. On Wednesday night, Guy talked about, towards the end of his talk, he was talking about how tense we are. And this Chris nature is so tightly wound, and but he was talking about being tense, and he says, you know how your back is tight and your shoulders are tight, and I'm like, oh my God. And your face is tight and your hands are clenched. I was like, oh my God. But that's the shining light, to be able to see how tightly wound we are. Why are we so tight? It's because we're defending ourselves from
ourselves. Defending ourselves from ourselves.
Right, from this phantom, from this imagined image that we have created over time. You know, I think of the haunted house that we've created. We're trying to hold it all together instead of just let it all fall. And wouldn't it be a nice life to be connected to it instead of always following an agenda that the mind has created for you to run after? So, all that.
Good morning. My name is Sally. There's two things. I do have a question for you. What has occurred to me, I guess, in just the last couple of days is thinking or considering the part and the whole. And I sense, Guy, that the part is a part, but it is also a whole. It's a whole in itself, but it's a part of something else.
That's whole.
That's whole.
Yeah.
And then that's just
That's called holy.
totally continuous. But it's totally continuous. It's always whole in itself, but it's always a part of something else that is whole. So that's as far as that's gone. But I do have a question about the two things that you gave us an Insight Timer to do first, helping to sleep.
Sure.
And I worked with this last night, and it wasn't very far into just the first one that I realized I was gone, that it was no longer keeping my attention.
I understand. You went out to get a quart of milk and came back 3 years later. Yeah.
Yeah, and that kept happening, so I kept starting over with that first part. But, I mean, is that right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
pretty much
Oh, yeah. Oh,
hear the
oh,
first
yeah.
part before
Look,
we go to the second.
I want my own attention. You don't know you don't have it. That's why you don't want it. What she's describing is she sat there and started working, sensing the foot, sensing the other foot, sensing them together. Different kind of experience when they're sensed together. I come up, sense my right leg, sense my left leg, sense them together. And that's a completely different sense of myself. And the next thing I know, I'm thinking about tapas in Spain. Well, see, this is what who decided to go to Spain? Who decided to start thinking about potato latkes? No, honest to God, who did that? Well, sure as hell wasn't me, because I had an intention, and I was using my attention for something that I wanted to do. By the way, so that I could see when something comes in and steals my attention. Because until then, it's not important to me. It doesn't even dawn on me that my attention belongs to an unconscious nature that seeks the continuity of itself. So that's the importance of it, not succeeding. You're not here to succeed. Stunning, isn't it?
It occurred to me that, well, maybe I should just go on to the second. And I thought, if I haven't got my attention in the first place, is it a good idea to go on to the second step? And I didn't. And eventually I just fell asleep.
Which was the purpose of the exercise. To help you rest. What are you resting from? Myself. So the short answer is no. Finish what you're doing.
Okay.
The world wants you to believe that it's possible to have a life without struggle. There is no life without struggle. But when you can see that life is struggle and that struggle lends life, what is struggle? The momentary intersection of these opposites. in which something altogether new is born, then in that struggle, in that crucifixion, is the birth. Then you understand the goodness of the struggle instead of having the fear of it.
Good morning. My name is Doug. This morning I was reading in Genesis. I haven't read this in a long time, and I'm just trying to get through the whole. I'll start with Genesis, beginning of the Bible. And in the 6th chapter, God wipes out mankind, right, with the whole flood. He was tired of seeing. I don't know. I'm speaking as.
Well, you're talking.
He saw what man had become following these desires, following all of this. And so the way to deal with that was to save one of each, or 2 of each, or 7 of each, depends.
To save the opposites.
To save the opposites, to save what was good that he created and what he needed, and put him into this ark. And I read through all of that, and then how the rain came. Of course, my mind goes, how in the world does he get a bunch of animals? How does he feed them for all these days? How does all of this stuff that, and we would say it could just all be metaphor, and maybe it is. It doesn't really matter. But I started thinking about it, or just sitting with it, going, why did this happen? It looked like God wanted vengeance on his own creation, that he created it. He's omniscient. Why would he allow this to happen? My mind's just going like that, and then I just sat with it. When you said the words, what was Christ, he was silent. And then anytime you honestly want to understand, and there can be some silence, something comes in. And then I read this thing from the old work. It says that the work is trying to make an ark in you.
Correct.
And it's trying to gather what is good. Essentially gather the good eyes, the eye that sees the shining moment. And once you see that for once, the next time it's a little bit easier. And then the next time. And it's like it's gathering the right eyes, the right parts of us into this vessel that, you don't do it. The work does it. If you think you're doing it, then it's not happening, I don't think. But it's like that was such a great connection for me, that story is our story all the time. And it is this gathering of the right parts of us, and that's what we're taught here, how to see things in a different way, or see things, because the basis of this whole talk was super simple.
Yes.
Don't react and see what happens, because we go with these things, we go with it, and there's no good to be found in that. And that was, I think, super clear to all of us who were listening today. But
just one clarification.
Yeah.
It's not don't react. It's withdraw the I from the reaction.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Right.
Come on, Katie. And I can't withdraw the usual sense of self from a reaction until I see that sense of self is actually not separate from what it's reacting to. They're tied together. And then the separation of the wheat and the chaff takes place. All of these stories are metaphors, honestly.
I love that, and I know that it goes along with just the little I wanted to say here. I'm working with this. No, I don't have full clarity on it yet, but first, I loved, Guy, when you said reactions appear and disappear in the same moment.
It's spectacular, isn't it?
It's
yeah.
Everything right there. It's almost like, and when he shows the spark, which I always get a little tense in the back of the room for the people sitting in the front, but it ends up being just fine. And that's Kate in a nutshell.
Nutshell?
Yes, and there that's true. I know. I better just continue on with what I wanted to say here. Reactions appear and disappear in the same moment. It's almost like something happens where there's that spark moment where it seems like two things are clashing, and they're actually not clashing. They're creating light.
Exactly.
And then, and I know this isn't right, but it's almost like two paths appear in front of you. And one is the path where I am afraid of the light, something in me rejects the light, and it just goes down its known path and reincarnates that self. And then the other path is using that to actually see that there's another opportunity, there's another path there. Again, I know it's not quite right, but I can feel it. You know, I can feel that if nothing else, there's another opportunity in that moment. And then you somewhere in the talk you said the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. But did you actually say the holy, Holy? Yeah. Okay, because when you said that, it was another one of those moments, because I was like, yes, exactly. That is the spark. The holy is greater than the sum of its parts. It's not either path. It's not either Kate. You know, it's the union of the two. So again, I'm just sort of getting a little feel of this. I don't quite see it all yet, but I just loved in particular those two parts.
What did Thoreau say? I came upon, anybody? I came upon two, not getting to that part yet. I came upon a path, the diverging paths. This one path is the path of identifying with the cause, and this path is the cause of identifying with myself, responding to it. But I took the road less traveled, the middle path, shining moment. Yeah.
Beautiful.
That's our aim. Ask God to help you. Bye.